Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We're so glad to have you here with us today. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm joining from Leduc, Alberta, which is located on Treaty 6 territory and the traditional lands of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Nakota Sioux, and Métis. We honor all the people across Alberta who share history and a deep connection with this land, and we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. My name is Caleb Borse. I'm the Member Services and Communications Manager with the Alberta Recreation Parks Association. It's a pleasure to host this webinar today in partnership with Jen Gores from the Calgary Adapted Hub powered by Jumpstart. The webinar today is celebrating inclusive recreation in Alberta as part of our ongoing recognition of June's Recreation Parks Month, or JRPM, with the spotlight of inclusive recreation this week as we approach Inclusive Recreation Day, which is on June 19th. So this session explores how inclusive recreation initiatives are shaping more accessible, welcoming, and diverse spaces across our province, with the whether you're a recreation leader, program provider, or community member. We hope today inspires you to take some action toward creating truly barrier-free environments. We're going to talk a little bit about some stories of inclusive programming, practical tools and strategies, and then hopefully, again, just inspire broad community engagement and looking at different ways we can change what we do and how we look at inclusive recreation. So together, we're working to ensure all Albertans, regardless of ability, can experience the joy and benefits of recreation and parks. Before we dive too far into it, like I did mention, at ARPA, we celebrate the month of June as June's Recreation and Parks Month. It's a time to highlight the many ways that recreation parks strengthen our communities. So this year's theme is Celebrate JRPM and invites everyone to recognize the critical role recreation plays in building healthy, active, and connected communities. If you haven't had a chance to look at our website and what's on there and what we have going on for recreation or June's Recreation Parks Month, feel free to take a look at it. We do have multiple things that you can check out and some resources, such as our support letter to share with your council or your different community members to get their support for recognizing June's Recreation Parks Month. There are weekly themes and activity guides that you can check out that are highlight different activities, different things that you can do to get out, enjoy recreation in parks. You can see the different themes. This week, again, is inclusive recreation. Next week, the final week of JRPM is explore your community. So feel free to take a look at our website, check out some of the activity guides, as well as share on social media what you are doing and what you're participating in. We also do have a contest that's going on. So every Tuesday and Thursday, we are posting some different questions related to the theme of the week. If you answer and participate in the questions either on social media or come to this page, scroll down, and there are Google Forms as well to make sure that everyone has a chance to participate, whether you use social media or not. You will be entered in to win the grand prize, which I'm not 100% sure what it is, if I'm being honest with you. So, but you will be entered in to win the grand prize. And there is the link in the chat box for anyone that is interested in learning more. All right, quick couple housekeeping things before we kind of dive into the webinar and I turn it over to Jen, is you are welcome to submit questions at any time using either the chat box or the question and answer box, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. This is a webinar, so you will not be able to turn your microphone on and talk, so please be sure to type that into the chat box. And we will try to move forward and answer any questions that you have. All right. Again, so this week of JRPM is all about creating inclusive recreation. We're thrilled to be joined by Jen Gores, the Executive Director of the Calgary Adapted Hub, powered by Jumpstart. Jen will be sharing insights on how inclusive recreation is being implemented across Alberta, what steps we can take to create programs and spaces where everyone feels welcome and included. So please join me in welcoming Jen to the virtual stage.
Awesome. Thanks, Caleb. I'm just going to share my screen here. Welcome everyone out there. Yeah, we're going to be talking a little bit about inclusive recreation in Alberta. We're based in Calgary, and we'll talk a little bit about that, but some stories and strategies and momentum that's happening out in the community with regards to inclusive and adapted recreation. It's definitely something that's coming more and more popular, or not popular, but more and more to the forefront of recreation practitioners and organizations across our province, particularly in Calgary, through the Calgary Adapted Hub and some of our partners. So before I move along to that, I just want to do a quick land acknowledgement. So in the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge that Calgary, Alberta is on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani First Nations, the Tsuut'ina First Nation, the Stoney Nakoda, including the Chiniki, Bears Paw, and Wesley First Nations, and the Métis Nation of Alberta Districts 5 and 6, as well as all people who make their homes here on Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. In particular, I reside and born, raised in Calgary. I currently live on the banks of Wolf Creek, which is now called Fish Creek Park or Fish Creek Provincial Park here in Calgary, Alberta. So happy to be here today. Let's take a quick look at disability across Canada. So I know recreation people, we like some stats. So there's a large group or population of people living with disabilities across Canada. So these statistics come from around 2022 through the Canadian statistics. So 27% of Canadians are age 15 years of age or older. So that's 8 million Canadians are living with one or more disabilities. When we look at specific age demographics, 15 to 64-year-olds, there are 24% of those folks are living with a disability, and 38% are living with a disability who are 65 age or older. So more specifically, within a disability among adults 15 years of age or older, the most common is pain-related disability. So 61% of those folks are living with some type of pain disability, whether it's mobility or joint or chronic pain. We have flexibility and mobility challenges, mental health, cognitive, hearing, visual, and developmental disabilities. When we talk about disability from an intersectionality perspective, women are more likely than men to report having disability. And from an Indigenous perspective, 41% of Indigenous peoples note that they have a disability. Within the LGBTQ2IS+ community, those folks are more likely to report mental health related disabilities. So when we're talking about people who are coming to our organizations or part of our communities, there's a large percentage of people living with disabilities, whether it's visible or non-visible. Because the Calgary Adapted Hub works particularly with children, I'll just kind of dive into some stats around kids with disabilities. So 1 in 10 children, or 240,000 Canadian children and youth across this country, live with a disability, and that could be visible or non-visible, cognitive, could be visual, hearing impairment, kind of the spectrum of disability. Canadian Tire Jumpstart is our primary funder, and if you are familiar with them, I'm sure have read the State of Play report. Last year, they published it around disability and barriers to participation. So just to highlight some of those stats, when we are talking about kiddos with disability, they want to play sports, but a lot of times they face barriers to participation, whether they don't have the skills, whether it's physical literacy skills or fundamental movement skills, or they just don't have friends. Particularly, they know that they feel like they don't belong in those spaces. However, we know that kids, whether they have disabilities or not, they just want to play with their friends and they want to have fun out in their communities and playing sports, participating in recreation activities. So we know that the barriers exist, but how can we work together to create spaces and program opportunities and organizations that make sure that they have a space where they can belong and they can show up and be safe? So the Calgary Adapted Hub, just to give some more background on who we are. So the Calgary Adapted Hub is 5 years old. It was started just at the beginning of COVID. And it was Dr. David Legg, who is out of Mount Royal University, was kind of the impetus for the collective. And it started with MNP, the City of Calgary, Vivo. Those 4 organizations got together and said, hey, we know that there is a gap around inclusive and adapted sport and recreation opportunities. How can we work together to create more opportunities out in the community for children and youth living with disabilities? Since then, so over the 5 years of our organization, we have brought on board all 14 of the public recreation facilities and organizations across Calgary. So on the screen there, you'll see Mount Royal University, MNP, Vivo, Westside, and Trico. Those are our 2 newest partners. They came on board April 2025. We have Genesis Center, the YMCA Calgary, so all of their YMCA branches, the University of Calgary, Vacova, Sport Calgary, City of Calgary, WinSport, and then we have 2 Indigenous partners, Siksika Health Services and Sutina Seven Chiefs Sportsplex, which is just on the southwest borders of Calgary. So collectively, when we bring these organizations together, we know that we are stronger together, because when we have resources that we can mobilize together, that we can collaborate, we know that we can do really great things in our community. So the impetus of that collective is really part of our logo. So you can see in the logo here that not one part of our logo overlaps with one another. So again, when we work together, we might see gaps in our own organization, but we know that because we talk to each other and we communicate and have those partnerships, we can make sure that no spot is not or left uncovered. So the whole is really greater than the sum of its parts. So at the Calgary Adapted Hub, our mission here is to provide quality, inclusive, accessible sport and recreation programs for all children in Calgary. When we say children, our demographic really is targeted at 4 to 24 years of age. Typically in recreation programming, it starts at 4 and will go up to 12 years of age, but we know that people living with disabilities, their need for recreation doesn't stop at 12, and it certainly doesn't stop at 18 years of age when they turn an adult. So we extend up to 24, and to be honest, a lot of times we do extend even beyond 24 years of age with some of our multi-sport programs, because again, recreation and sport is one of those spaces where you can come and you could participate and belong be part of your community. So 4 to 24 is really the age range that we work with and beyond. Our vision is creating a Calgary where every child, youth, and family can belong through quality, inclusive, and accessible sport and recreation programs. So we know that, again, when we work with our partners, where there's funding available and we can support each other to offer programs, whether it's an adapted swim program or adapted cheerleading program, we know that there are families out there that they can find the space where they feel like they belong. Our organization is made up of kind of 3 arms. So we have an executive committee who's chaired by Dr. David Legg, who is the founder of the Calgary Adapted Hub. And then we have representation from each one of those organizations that are part of our collective, from the City of Calgary right down to the YMCA. We have a programs committee. So within each organization, we have someone who is in charge of programs, whether that's a program supervisor or a direct delivery staff that are part of our programs committee. And then one of my favorite parts is we have a community advisory board that is composed of organizations or people out in the community who are working within the disability space or have lived experience with disability. The folks on that community advisory really inform all of the decisions that we make, from a programming decision right up into a funding decision. Because if you are not living with disability, if you're not a parent of a child living with a disability, we can really only make decisions that are based on our own lived experience. So it's really important to have those voices at the table. So collectively, we are a whole bunch of folks looking at doing inclusive and adapted recreation programming here in the city. I just want to take a quick second to talk a little bit about language. So there are kind of 3 different language kind of corners, if you will. So when we talk about inclusive and adapted recreation, a lot of times those terms are interchanged, but actually they're not the same. So when we talk about inclusive programming, those are spaces or programming opportunities where people of all abilities get to play and recreate together. Adapted programming is taking a recreation program or a sport program and adapting it to the needs of the folks or the kids that are coming to the program. So for instance, we might have, like in the top right-hand corner, we might have adapted equipment so that children living with a physical or a mobility challenge can participate in a bowling activity, which you'll see the kiddo in the red hat in that picture is doing. Parasport is the pathway to the Paralympics. So we do have participants who start off in grassroots programming who eventually go into parasport pathways. So those athletes or participants might have taken a grassroots sledge program, really enjoyed that, and then have followed through the pathway to within the Paralympic sport movement. And again, that pathway is really onto the Paralympic movement. So a lot of times when we talk about sport and recreation from a community standpoint, really it's inclusive and adaptive programming that we're talking about. Some stats from last year, from 2024, that we're really proud of. So through the partnerships that we have through the 12 partners, so we just onboarded our 13th and 14th. So last year we just had 12. We had 3,000 kids, Calgary and area kids, participating in adapted and inclusive sport programs through our partners. We had 50 of those were offered through CAW partners. Out in the community, we have 95. Actually, right now it's about 110 external sport partners. So whether it's an adapted yoga program, soccer program, we have adapted cheerleading, like I mentioned, water ski, scuba diving, all those folks who are doing adapted programming out in the community, we would consider our external partners. So we would refer folks through our family navigation service, which we'll talk about in a second, to those external sport partners. So we can kind of extend what we're doing out in the community. So we have our bricks and mortar locations and organizations that are part of our collective. And then outside of that, we have over 100 external sport partners, which is amazing. With our family navigation service, we had 101 families access that service last year. So really getting families to the point or to the space that they are interested in participating in, or that they're might want to try recreation and sport within that context. And then last year we were involved in 21 resource and outreach fair opportunities, and then community research building days. We had 23 of those last year. So we've gone from a little collective that could to quite a big organization that really supports thousands and thousands of kids out in the community. So some success stories and promising practices from the Calgary Adapted Hub. Really, when we talk about leveraging resources, or what we do as part of the Calgary Adapted Hub, is kind of three main kind of pathways. So integrated knowledge translation. So as a collective, not only do we bring knowledge within the collective to enhance adapted and recreation sport spaces, but we also are involved in quite a few national and provincial sport and recreation research projects. So the Canadian Disability Participation Project 2.0, the Inclusive Sport and Recreation Advisory Committee, we're part of the APA, Adapted Physical Activity Association. So those folks who are doing research out in the community, we take that information, we bundle it up in a way that is useful and timely and helpful to our organizations out in our communities, whether it's our bricks and mortar organizations or our external sport partners. So integrating that research knowledge into best and promising practices. We have intentional pathways to participation. So making sure that our families are getting to the spaces that they need to or are interested in being part of. And then really, probably, again, one of my most favorite part is the creative solution. So finding ways that we can leverage our existing resources, or maybe connect the dots for organizations that are doing great things in the community to one another, so we can create those solutions that are helpful for our families and our kiddos in the community. So like I mentioned earlier, we have a family navigation service. So it's been around since the start of the Calgary Adapted Hub, and we put through, again, 100 families last year. We're probably on target for 200 this year. It has always been fully staffed by practicum students from the University of Calgary or Mount Royal University, which is really amazing, not only for us, but also for them to get some experience out in the community. But essentially what happens is a family might have heard of us through their school, so like a Red for Education service or maybe a CBE school. They get in touch with us by filling out a form. So it's a general intake form. The students who are in charge of the family navigation service will look through that form. They'll meet one-on-one with that family, whether it's online or in person or via Zoom, learn a little bit more about them, what barriers they're seeing out in the community. So typically we see transportation being one of those challenges, any activities that they're interested in doing, or maybe they've done in the past. Then we create an action plan for them, like a curated recreation programming list. So if we have a family who is really interested in swimming lessons, based on their geographic location and where they're able to get to by bus or by car, we create a list of programs that might be a good fit for their family. And then we follow up with them to see if they have any questions, concerns, or maybe if there's something else they're interested in doing. So not only is it just it could be just a one-off service for us, but because it's a full circle service and we come back to them over and over again, we've seen kids and families grow up through that service. And we've gotten them in touch with different opportunities that maybe they didn't know about, like adapted cheerleading or adapted water ski programs. So family navigation service is probably one of our highest intakes as part of our programming at the Calgary Adapted Hub. We also have the Adapted Recreation Discovery Guide. It was a long-standing resource from the 1980s through the city of Calgary. It used to be actually a mailed document. So you'd sign up on a piece of paper and then the city of Calgary would mail you out this massive document of all of the adapted recreation opportunities out in the city of Calgary. It kind of got sidelined for quite a few years, but last year we took over this guide in partnership with the city of Calgary. So it's fully updated with all of the opportunities that families can access through as recreation and sport opportunities, but also respite care. So if we have a family who maybe a parent is interested in having their child learn swimming, but cannot get in the pool for whatever reason, there are organizations out in the community that those families can hire, or they can be FSCD funded, and then those people will come and participate alongside the kiddos in the program. So this is the 2024 version. The 2025 version will be uploaded to our website in the next week or so, and it's a fully downloadable PDF. It's also available on all of our 14 partners' websites as well. So a really great resource, just bringing all the pieces together to make sure that there's in one cohesive spot so that it's easy to find out in the community. Another really great thing around integrated knowledge translation is our training modules. So these are free. We had a Make a Diff grant that we got 2 years ago, and we were able to create some really amazing training modules. We know that through our partners and through our external support partners, that training is always really challenging, whether it's the time or it's the staff costs. So the wages to take that training, we know that is a barrier. So we wanted to make sure that it was as easy as possible to get the information to the people who are actually going to, or who need that. So there's currently 4, I know there's 5 listed here, but 4 modules that are free. They're available through our website. They're actual Canva presentations. So they're meant to be delivered in-house by our partners or out in the community, just like as one of you out in your organizations. So there's a script that goes along with the Canva presentation, and then any of the pieces of that presentation where you might need some extra help or some support, we actually have the experts talking in the bottom corner. So the first one is an Introduction to Inclusion. That's a webinar that was in partnership with Inclusion Incorporated. So you just watch it with your staff. There's a mental health literacy one that we worked with Alberta Health Services with. Recreation Inclusion with Between Friends, which is a not-for-profit organization here in Calgary that works primarily with folks with cognitive and developmental disabilities. We have Unlocking the Potential of Neurodiverse Participants in partnership with Autism Asperger's Friendship Society. And then the 5th one I just finished this morning that will launch probably the next day or so is Approaching Behaviors of Concern with Dr. Sarah McEachran, who is a pediatrician out of the Alberta Children's Hospital. We've heard many, many times that challenging behavior is one of the barriers to not only our programming partners, but our external support partners. So we want to make sure that there are some really tangible tools and background around approaching behaviors of concern. So again, those are all available on our website. They take about 30 to 45 minutes to complete. There's some worksheets that go along with them, and you can expand and decrease the length however you see fit for your summer day camp training programs or your potentially a staff meeting. You can have these available to you. I just want to also point out that Jumpstart also has some really great trainings that are available on their website. So the Belonging Playbook you see on the right-hand corner there, really awesome resource that you can download and you can share with staff. And then a training that they have online. I'm not sure the cost of it currently, but Coaching Kids of All Abilities, if you are looking at getting more into the sport and adapted sport and recreation space. In terms of creative solutions, I just want to point out a couple things that we're currently doing and that we've done in the past. So we work quite closely with all of our partners to do some communication. We have a really active social media platform for a whole bunch of different platforms. Our newsletter has 400 subscribers. So we want to take the information that's happening out in the community and get in front of the eyes of as many people as possible. So on the left-hand side, you'll see this really great infographic that we designed for Vivo, just highlighting how accessible their new facilities were. So just it was a printable that people could take with them from the front desk, or they could download right off the website, just showcasing the amazing things that were happening at Vivo. We had quite a few people really interested in that information. We have pictures that, well, you'll see on the bottom left-hand corner, this was an adapted paddling program run out of the University of Calgary in partnership with the Calgary Adapted Hub. So sharing the stories of what is happening out in the community, whether it's adapted paddling or a sledge hockey program at a day camp. And then we had two external sport partners here. You can see adapted basketball at Spray Lakes and Sockability. So really, again, telling a story and making connection for families and kiddos with disabilities out in the community. Because oftentimes we know that those families can be very isolated and not have the connections. So we want to try and make that as easy as possible to get people to the programs to be part of those communities. One of the more current things that is happening out in the community that we're really, really proud of is if you are living in Calgary or perhaps you read the news quite a bit, Vekova, which is a long-standing recreation facility for people living with disabilities, just right next to the University of Calgary. They have been around since the 60s. Unfortunately, in the next couple of weeks, they are closing their facility. It is life cycled out and they didn't have a space to go. And they had quite a few participants that came for swimming lessons, for day programs, for recreation out within that facility. So through the Calgary Adapted Hub, we connected Vekova and Vivo, who are both partners with us, but we facilitated conversations around how we can make sure that participants who are existing at Vekova have a space to go. And Vivo generously, throughout the year, we've had conversations, but generously open up their doors. And we created a transition plan for those participants to move from Vekova to Vivo. So not only are there swim lessons and adapted programming happening at Vivo, they adjusted their pool temperature to 32 degrees. So their lane pool that you'll see there is 32 degrees, which is the pool temperature at Vekova. So Vekova used to, well, their pool was a therapy pool. So a lot of folks with disabilities or mobility challenges or maybe chronic disease would use that pool facility because of the temperature. And that was the only one left in Calgary. So Vivo throughout the year adjusted and did some pretty significant renovations to make that happen. So now all the folks for Vekova have a space to go that is similar to what they had previously. So we're really excited about that collaboration. That just happened maybe 3 weeks ago. So they've just opened that space up. Another really great thing is the Vivo Sensory Time. So we have worked with them to create a space throughout their facility with dimmed lights, lower audio. So within that sensory time, there is little to no music playing, but generally a space where people living with disabilities or without disabilities can come, and it's very low sensory input. There's also two designated spaces within the facility that people can go that are totally quiet, that have access to sensory equipment if they need to regulate or just have a quiet space to go to. Every day, Monday to Thursday from 1 to 3 p.m., that sensory time is happening. So really proud of Vivo for those two partnerships and what they're doing out in the community. We also have an adapted All Sport One Day. So this is in collaboration with Sport Calgary, who's one of our key partners, and then 4 of our external sport partners. So Lacrossing Barriers, Sockability, Balloon Wellness, and Yogabilities. So this is a adapted Pride event out of Marlborough Community Center. We know there's a high population of newcomers in that area, but quite a few kids living with disabilities who don't have access to community sport and recreation programs outside of their community. So what we've done is brought a whole bunch of activities to them to try them out, with the hopes that we can get some of those programs up and running. So really proud of that as well. And that's planned by our practicum students, which is pretty fantastic. And then last but not least, we have the Play It Forward Fund. So this is an exciting granting opportunity that we have at the Calgary Adapted Hub. So partners or any of our key partners can partner with external sport partners to access $10,000 on a 3-year plan to bring more adapted sport and recreation programs to their facilities. So for instance, coming September, Vivo will be in partnership with Lacrossing Barriers to offer an adapted lacrosse program all of the fall and the spring. So we know that the key organizations have facilities and spaces available, and the external partners are looking for those spaces to run programs. So this is kind of the marriage of both of those things with a couple of dollars attached to make sure that it's happened or is happening. So really proud of that piece of funding. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more about it and you're in the Calgary area, I'd be happy to chat a little bit more about what that might look like. Now, I know we've talked a lot about the Calgary Adapted Hub, but I just want to jump into creating inclusive recreation in your community, because a lot of times we get phone calls of folks, especially in rural communities, who are like, well, I don't even know where to start. Like, I know there's people living with disabilities in my community. It seems overwhelming. I don't know where to start. And can you help? So one of the really great resources out in the community is through the Steadward Center. It is the Para Ready 2.0 document. It's totally free. You can download it off their website. And the next kind of 3 slides are taken from there. But I think the most important part of adapted inclusive recreation, or creating spaces for people with disabilities, is just really starting small. And I know, again, it can feel overwhelming, but taking from the Para Ready document, I've kind of created a couple slides around how to do that. So I think the first one is around being proactive, and that could be forming a focus or an advisory group of people living with disabilities, or maybe it just starts off small with a coffee and chat time, or just even a Google form that people can give information to you as an organization. From that little baby step, you can share how your organization is welcoming to all. And a lot of times organizations will, again, start with a little advisory group or some people with lived experience, and then help inform strategic plans or facility renovation plans, and really communicate how your organization is welcoming to all. Second, you can create a personal statement on how you'll be inclusive. So a lot of times when we talk with young students out in the community, we talk about just changing language. So using person-first language is a really great step. So instead of disabled people or handicaps parking spots, we can change our language to be person-first. So a person living with a disability, a child who has Down syndrome, or just using names. So David, instead of always attaching disability. So creating that change in language is a really great start. From that, we can write and share an organizational inclusion statement with our community. So again, when the revamping of the strategic plan is happening, or there's some communication around how your organization is being inclusive, being a part of that conversation. From a promotion standpoint, just having larger print program guides is a really great start. So whether that is just an accessible print off that goes alongside the program guide, or just printing your printable guide in larger font, that's a really great way to start being inclusive. Where that can lead to is building an accessible website, and Rick Hansen Foundation has some really great resources on how to do that, whether it's closed captioning or videos, or again, larger print on their website, or screen reader enabled functions. That's how we kind of move the needle towards more inclusive and adapted spaces. From a programming end of things, which is kind of one of my passions, is really taking a hard look at your programming. Are we offering day camps that are gym focused and the gym is inaccessible? Or are we having programs or sport programs that maybe aren't accessible for children and youth who are using a wheelchair? Really taking a hard look at our programming and seeing what things that we can change and make sure that they're adapted and inclusive is a really great start. And then offering programs across the inclusion spectrum. So perhaps instead of having day camps for all kids, maybe perhaps we look at having a specific program for children who are neurodiverse. So there's less sensory, maybe we're in a darker room, maybe it's a quieter space, maybe it's a shorter time frame, whatever that might be. And again, at the Calgary Adapted Hub, we are more than happy to help have those conversations and even look at your programming through an auditing kind of lens. Next up, people doing a staffing and volunteer training audit. Like I mentioned earlier, training is kind of one of those barriers that we see quite a lot. We just don't know where to start. It seems super overwhelming. We're just going to keep doing what we've always been doing. And again, there's lots of resources out in the community, whether it's through us, through our free training modules or Jumpstart. Safe Sport has some modules. Those things are a really great way to start off with around inclusion, and then even building those into learning and development plans throughout the year. So it's not, we're just looking, kind of through the ability lens. We're looking at inclusion and making adapted and recreation experiences, not only for the people that we serve, but also for our staff. From participation, sensory backpacks are available at the front desk, would be a really great starting point. They're really easy to make, having sensory input earphones, some fidget toys, just some smaller things in the backpack that if we need to, or if a participant needs to regulate, those are available for them. Super cheap. You can get all those things from the dollar store. And if you need help curating a list of things that are in sensory backpacks through some of our partners, be happy to have that conversation with you. And then we can move along to scheduling a dedicated sensory time like Vivo has done in the past. It takes a little bit of logistical planning around turning down the lights and making sure there's no sound. And then again, communicating that to our community. But it is one of those very doable steps that can increase our inclusive spaces for people living with disabilities in our community. From a play standpoint, trying or offering try-it or drop-in opportunities is a really great way to see what people are interested in and what's going to work in your community. So whether it's a drop-in wheelchair program like the City of Calgary is running currently, or even a goal ball or an adapted multi-sport program, those are really easy wins. If you're moving towards like along that continuum and maybe you're renovating your facility or you're looking at capital projects, really designing them from a universal design principle or looking at some of the Rick Hansen Foundation principles, that is a really great way to make sure that spaces are inclusive, whether it's ramp angles or having doorways wide enough that wheelchairs can fit through them. Really taking a hard lens or a hard look at how we're making our spaces accessible is really important. Reviewing the Sport for Life LTAD model around pathways of participation, and then maybe looking at collaborating community-based recreation sport opportunities. So if you have somebody who is maybe a wheelchair athlete or somebody who is visually impaired who plays visual impaired sport, maybe collaborating with them and creating programs that are accessible to everyone, or again, folding back into those try-it opportunities is a great way to start the pathways to participation. And then a couple more things, price, having information about external funding opportunities. One of our biggest barriers behind transportation is funding. So we know that getting into programs is really costly, especially when we're talking about recreation and sport programs in adapted spaces. So having opportunities or information around external funding opportunities is really important. And then if we're, again, along that continuum is advocating for additional funding. When we put our voices together, we're able to go to government, whether it's municipal or provincial, to say that inclusive programming is really important. We need more money to make that happen. Again, collective impact is really what we're after. And then looking at partnerships for community connections, and then you can create a collaborative of folks. It doesn't have to be the Calgary Adapted Hub by any means, but it can be a collective of people who are really passionate about adapted and inclusive sport and recreation. And that is just the seed. And it's pretty amazing to see what happens when we, again, work together to make sure that adapted and inclusive recreation is at the forefront. Just before I stop this presentation, I just want to highlight our membership options. Again, a lot of our organizations that come to us, especially from rural communities, say we just don't know where to start. What things are happening out in the community? Having or being part of our newsletter is a really great start. So if you want to scan that QR code, it'll ask you for which kind of category that you're in, and we curate our communications to those 4 different groups. But you'll see generally what's happening out in the community funding opportunities, training opportunities, really cool special events, try it activities that are happening. You can connect with those organizations and potentially have them come to your area or just duplicate them. And we, again, would be happy to help and support that happening. That was a lot of information, but thank you for being part of the Inclusive Recreation Week. I know we have quite a bit happening on our social media, so if you want to follow us there at YYC Adapted Hub, we have resources and activities and training things also connected to ARPA as well. So find us there, and you can check us out on our website if you want to scan the QR code. But again, always happy to help and talk about adapted and inclusive recreation anytime.
Thank you, Jen. Did just share all the social media and the website links in the chat box. Yeah, that was incredible. I thought it was amazing just to start off with looking at the different types of disabilities. I think, people's minds can sometimes go to the visible disabilities, but there's so much more than just what is visible. And I really like those steps for starting, on pathways to participation. If anyone has any questions or anything like that, feel free to throw it in the chat box or the question and answer box as well. But to start off, I did have one question for you, Jen, here. I think, again, those pathways were fantastic. And you mentioned that it's great for kind of some of the smaller communities or more rural communities that may not have as much time or available staff to kind of really start or not sure where to start with some of the inclusive programming. So is there one big piece of advice out of everything that you shared that someone in that kind of spot could start right now that make a start change in that adaptable inclusive programming?
That's a great question. I think off the top of my head would just be connecting with other organizations or collectives that are doing that work. So whether it's the Calgary Adapted Hub or it's the provincial organizations related to disability, just being part of those conversations, you're going to learn so much about disability, inclusion, recreation, sport, and how you can take those baby steps to make it happen. Yeah, I think there's so many people passionate about this space and this sector that they're always willing to help and support and make sure that people are involved in the community. So I think that would be the first step. And then I think the second thing would be just taking a really hard look at what you're already doing and seeing where there's small changes that you can make happen. Because again, I think it can be really overwhelming, but even just changing the language of how we talk about people with disabilities is something that's really easy to do and an easy, swift change to get more into that inclusive kind of headspace. But again, we are always happy to connect, whether it's us or somebody out in the community with you as an organization or an individual around that adapted and sport and recreation. Because again, you can't do it all, but there are people who can give you ideas, support you, send you training links, whatever that might be, to get you kind of more down the adapted sport recreation space.
Amazing. My follow-up question on that. So you mentioned at the start that one of the stats is that most youth, the biggest reason they don't want to participate is they don't feel welcome. So is there, one or maybe a few big common barriers that a recreation programmer could take right off the bat to kind of help address some of those barriers and make it a little bit more welcoming for a youth with disability?
Yeah, that's a great question. We just had this conversation not too long ago. So I think it starts with the registration process. When we have an intake form that a family's filling out, a lot of times, and this has happened since I did day camps 30 years ago, is families are really hesitant to share that their child has a disability because there's stigma attached with that. So if they put down, my child has autism or is neurodiverse, there's a lot of negative things that come along with that kind of diagnosis. So a lot of times they just won't say anything. So making sure that we're having conversations in the intake process, that it's really safe. It's a safe space for people to disclose that they have a child or that they're living with a disability is really important. So again, setting up that space is really key. Second, I think there's a training element here. So making sure that our staff are prepared. A lot of times we'll see, even in our key organizations, we have staff who are very young, so 16, 17-year-olds who don't come with a lot of lived experience within the recreation sport, but are so keen and excited to be part of summer day camp programs or recreation programs. So training them and making sure that they feel so fully supported, whether that's through a supervisor, through a programmer, or have the tools and strategies to deal with maybe some things that they're not expecting. So again, back to the behaviors of concern, having the information to support kids through big feelings, or if there's some things that are maybe, a child maybe is having a meltdown, how do we support staff in doing that? I think is really, really important. And then having tips and tricks throughout the day camp space around programming specifically. So making sure that programming ebbs and flows, so we're not high action all of the time. We're maybe playing super high energy activities, and then we have spaces or time right after that with quieter activities, and then they kind of ebb and flow throughout the day. That's going to reduce some of those challenging behaviors, which is one of the biggest barriers. And then just being really cognizant of how you're creating safe spaces for participants. So making sure that everybody knows each other's names, making sure that they can participate in a way that feels safe for them. So whether that's adapting a game or activity so that everybody can play, or maybe making partners so that kids get to connect with one another and learn a little bit more about them. Those things are going to help create those spaces where kids feel like they belong, whether they have a disability or not. Making small tweaks and changes and making sure that people are prepared, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to put it. Whether they are disabled or not, those are definitely steps that help make it more welcoming at the end of the days. All right. Thank you again, Jen. The Calgary Adapted Hub, powered by Jumpstart. Looks like you are doing a lot of amazing work. If anyone is interested in finding maybe some of those modules to help their staff, or just connecting with Jen a little bit further, please find the website calgaryadaptedhub.com. They're on all the social medias, again, shared in the chat box there. Before we wrap up, just a quick reminder that there's still 2 weeks left of June's Recreation and Parks Month. Like we mentioned, this week is Inclusive Recreation Week. Inclusive Recreation Day is June 19th. So feel free to look up in your community some of the different options to try maybe a adaptable or a parasport sport, and take a look at it and try it out. June 21st is also the National Indigenous Peoples Day, so we definitely encourage you to also look for different ways to celebrate and recognize the National Indigenous Peoples Day. And next week's JRPM theme is Explore Your Community. So those all play nicely into the overall theme for next week. Again, thank you, Jen. I appreciate you taking the time. That was very informative. And it was amazing to see what Calgary Adapted Hub is doing. Thank you, everyone else, for being here today. And we look forward to working towards making our Alberta recreation programs more inclusive and accessible for everyone. So have a great day, and thank you for coming. And make sure you go out and celebrate June's Recreation Parks Month.
Thanks, everyone.